Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, and you are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. For many expecting mothers, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act would grant protections in regard to labor, health, and safety. New York and national leaders are urging U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to pass legislation that combats pregnancy discrimination. Joining me to discuss this is a community advocate for a better balance, Armanda Legros, and Elizabeth Gedmark, the Vice President of A Better Balance. Thank you both for joining me. Now, Armanda, I want to start with you. Can you just tell us what your experience was, working in the field as a pregnant person?
Um, my experience was great with my job before I got pregnant. And once I became pregnant, that's when, uh, you know, I believe I was discriminated against. Where I was with my job for about 2.5 years. And in my 6 month of my pregnancy, I pulled a muscle in my stomach and gave him a note after seeing the doctor for restraining from heavy lifting to my boss at the time, and he took one look at the note and sent me home without pay indefinitely, and told me that I couldn't work without any restrictions.
Now, I understand that, your story, so many people have gone through this. Can you just let everybody know or talk about the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act?
I can jump in. Thank you so much for having me. So, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is common sense bipartisan legislation that would require employers to provide reasonable accommodations for pregnant and postpartum workers. Things like access to water to stay hydrated, a transfer to a lighter duty shift, or time and space to express breast milk, unless it would be an undue hardship on the employer. And the problem is that although this bill has the votes to pass in Congress right now, time is running out. We are down to the wire, and any delay means almost certain death of the legislation and critical protections for millions of women and their families.
Now, there is an effort to combat pregnancy discrimination. Can you explain what type of discrimination pregnant workers often face?
This is a problem that A Better Balance identified over 10 years ago when Dina Baxt, our co founder and co president, wrote an op ed in the New York Times identifying the problem of pregnant workers, just like Armanda, as you heard, who were pushed out of their jobs for requesting simple accommodations to stay healthy. And the economic consequences are devastating, as Armanda can tell you. Others are forced to risk their health in order to shore up their paycheck and their income and can have health implications. It's a problem that persists to this day, even though women just like Armanda, as well as A Better Balance and our other advocates and partner organizations have been fighting for over a decade. We hear about it day in and day out through A Better Balance's free, confidential legal helpline.
Now, the executive director for New York Civil Liberties Union, Donna Lieberman, explained pregnant workers are often forced to quit, coerced into taking unpaid leave, or they usually get fired. I first want to know, is this against the law?
Unfortunately, all too often, employers are not actually violating the law or are not held accountable when they push out their pregnant workers who need a simple, reasonable accommodation. That's because of gaps in federal law that only require employers to treat pregnant workers as well as they treat others. And that's often an impossible standard to meet. So there are some states like New York that have passed their own laws, but we need federal law to cover every corner of the country and to stop pregnancy discrimination in its tracks. And I will also say that the NYCLU and the ACLU National have been excellent partners and are part of a broad and diverse coalition that also includes groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, many powerful unions and labor, as well as so many others, and the wonderful and amazing community advocates and brave individuals just like Armanda.
Now, because of this, are these women, are they just unable to take their employers to court since it's technically not against the law?
Well, A Better Balance released a report recently called Long Overdue that found that 2/3 of women are losing their pregnancy discrimination cases in federal court. So even for those who bring an employer to court, they often face a losing battle. And for the vast majority, they have no desire to go to court. They don't have the time or the money for that. They simply want the accommodation so that they can stay healthy and prevent problems in the first place, and so that they can keep their paychecks. And that's exactly what the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is designed to do. It would ensure that the pregnant worker and her employer can sit down and have a conversation and don't even have to think about the court or lawyers or anything like that, and instead can just get the reasonable accommodation that they might need, exactly like Armanda was describing.
Now, as we all know, the pandemic definitely had an impact on so many different communities. I'm wondering, what impact did this have on working mothers and families? And Armanda, will actually start with you for this question. Like, what impact did the pandemic have on your life?
It was I believe I know that it was difficult for a lot of mothers, especially mothers that were pushed out of their jobs during a very stressful time during the pandemic, um, are struggling to provide for their families. Not just me was affected; a lot of people that I know was affected. Um, Mothers and expecting mothers were affected by it, and it's a devastating outcome when you lose your income when you need it the most, especially during the pandemic, when times were so uncertain and people were going through a lot of I would say a stress at that time. It was difficult for a lot of pregnant workers to be on the job and have those reasonable accommodations in dealing with sickness. It was a difficult time.
Now, I really like to know, what is Senator Chuck Schumer's role in this?
Um,
Well, as the Senate Majority Leader, Leader Schumer controls which bills come to the floor for a vote and has the power today to pass the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act because it has the 60 plus votes to overcome any filibuster. And it has had those votes for months. Leader Schumer also approves which pieces of legislation, along with other congressional leaders, are added to end of year packages that Congress passes, like the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, or an omnibus spending package. And we would urge him to use that power to ensure that the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act does not fall on the cutting room floor. Better Balance and hundreds of others from nonprofit organizations, workers, advocates, faith leaders, business associations, and business leaders have been calling on him to not let the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act fail on his watch and to pass it this year. It would be unconscionable to let this bill die and leave millions of pregnant workers and their families in the lurch. If we wait any longer, then it will spell almost certain death for this legislation when the new Congress comes in just a few short weeks. Time is truly of the essence.
Now, according to the National Partnership for Women and Families, nearly 3 million women work during their pregnancy each year, representing 70% of all pregnant women in this country. I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on this, and how does this disproportionately affect Black, Latino, and immigrant women?
It's vitally important to understand how many millions this legislation affects. When you were talking about nearly 3 million women who work during their pregnancy each year, that is an enormous number. And we often hear from workers who are younger but are thinking about their career prospects. And they feel deterred from even applying to jobs that may not accommodate them during pregnancy, even though those might be better jobs with better pay or better benefits. We've also heard from women who say they are scared to get pregnant again after being pushed out during a previous pregnancy. So women, especially mothers and caregivers, they were here for us during the pandemic, working to care for everyone, teach our children at home while often risking their lives at frontline jobs, now is the time to pay attention to their needs and to pass the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
And
And Armanda, if you wanted to address the other question or
mhm.
add in.
Yeah, I believe that this bill would definitely benefit mothers that are struggling right now and in the future. And it does affect Black and Latino women more often as frontline workers. And I I hope that our Senate leaders will consider bringing the bill to the floor so that they can put a stop to just those horrible numbers that we're seeing. And I'm just hoping that that Chuck Schumer does do the right thing.
Now, can you just quickly let us know when are advocates hoping to see the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act take effect?
As soon as
We are,
possible.
that's right. We are looking for as soon as possible and without delay.
All right. I want to thank you both so much for joining us to talk about this really important topic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
To stay connected with A Better Balance, please visit their website at www.abetterbalance.org or follow them on Instagram at _better_balance and on Twitter at A Better Balance. We'll be right back with more Open right after this.